Welcome students. So in this class now we will be starting talking about the next topic, that is the very important interesting topic, that is investment criteria. And investment criteria, when we talk about, it has many names, very different names also, and the most popular name of the investment criteria is the capital budgeting. And techniques of capital budgeting are very important in evaluating any investment proposal. And when you go for understanding the concept of the capital budgeting, or maybe the say evaluating any long term investment proposal, so the investment criteria and use of this investment criteria is very important, is very popular. And we'll be understanding in detail now that what is this investment criteria, what is this process of capital budgeting, and what are the different tools and techniques of using this capital budgeting process, and how to make use of it, and how to utilize all this process for maybe evaluating whether any proposal is worthwhile, making any investment is worth or not. And if it is not worthwhile, so we can drop the idea even at this stage also. So we have already seen that so far we learnt about the preparation of the DPFR, detailed project feasibility report, and before that we talked about generation of the project idea. So when we go for project idea generation, and then we prepare the detailed project feasibility report, and it has the different facets. So important facets after the idea generation are the market and demand analysis, then we go for technical analysis, then we go for the financial estimates and projections, and then we finally arrive at this stage that after having all the inputs available with us, that market and demand analysis, which will be helping us to calculate the inflows, information about the cash inflows, and technical analysis would be largely helping us to work out the total amount of the cash outflows, and other say financial estimates and projections will be helping us to prepare the projected financial statements like your income statement, cash flow, and the balance sheet. So now the next thing, when we are going to do the project evaluation process, in this entire process, when we are going to talk about utilizing or using the capital budgeting techniques, or maybe making use of the investment criteria. So maybe though we have come very far, because we generated an idea, we conducted market and demand analysis, technical analysis, financial estimates and projections, and everything gave us the positive results. Idea was found to be very lucrative, and market and demand analysis gave us a very positive and so you call it as a very supportive results. And similarly, your technical analysis was maybe we were very happy to know about that all investments are available, or all capital outlays can be possibly done, material is available, technology is available, human resources are available, everything is available. So we can produce the goods or services and we can sell them in the market. So both the capabilities of producing or generating the service are also there, and the saleability of those product services is also there, because market and demand analysis has given the very healthy and very positive results, and financial projections are also very supportive and are in the favor of setting up of the venture. So coming so far, reaching up to this level, we have to now evaluate all those aspects. And even at this stage also, if we find that the project is not worthwhile, while using the concept of the time value of the money, because here we will be using the discounted cash flows. The concept of the discounted cash flows will be important here for us, both for the outflows also, for the inflows also. The cash flow values would be the discounted cash flows, which we will be discounting with the help of the something which is called as R. R is basically the weighted average cost of capital. So when we will be discounting, applying the concept of the time value of the money, because we understood here that when we were talking about the financial estimates and projections, there probably we didn't talk about the application of the concept of the time value of money. But now when we are going to evaluate the project, the investment criteria, when we are going to apply here, and when we are going to say evaluate the project using the capital budgeting tools and techniques, so we are going to apply the concept of the time value of money, and taking into consideration this compounding and discounting process of the cash flows, compounding and discounting of the cash flows, when we are talking about it, and we will consider the compounding and discounting process. Finally, we will have to see here that on the investment criteria, whether the project proves to be a worthwhile investment, it proves to be a worthless investment. So it has to pass the next test also. And after that, there is one more test which will be using it in the form of the risk analysis of the capital investment proposals. So here it is simply the evaluation of that investment using the concept of the time value of money, where the both outflows and inflows will be discounted and finally will be compared to each other. After that, we will go to the next step of this financial estimates and projections, or the financial analysis of the overall project decision or the investment decision with the help of the risk analysis in the capital budgeting process. So that would be the further more stricter evaluation, but at this level also the project has to come up to our expectations, and finally we will have to see here that the value of discounted value of the cash outflows and cash inflows remains equal. That is a minimum decision criteria, that is a minimum requirement of any investment proposal or any investment venture. If it is more, for example, the value of the cash outflows is less as compared to the total discounted value of the cash inflows, it is a very good, say you can call it as a positive proposition. But if it is reverse, that the discounted value of the cash outflows or the present value of the cash outflows is more than the, say, the present value of the cash inflows, then what will happen? Finally, the net result of the project would be negative, in minus, and we cannot accept those investment proposals. So finally, here something we call it as the difference between the, say, present value of the cash outflows and cash inflows has to be 0, and that technically we call it as NPV, or the net present value. And there we use this investment criteria, decision criteria, and the basis of making the decision for any new investment would be that NPV should be 0, net present value should be 0 minimum. This is a minimum requirement. When you call it as the investment criteria, means the NPV is basically the investment criteria. Broadly, the NPV is basically the investment criteria, and NPV has to be 0 minimum. If it is more than 0, very good, but if it is less than 0, means it is in negative, it is in minus, and we will not go for making investment into that venture. So you can understand the relevance of this particular concept of the investment as a decision making, that is the decision criteria, or you call it as the capital budgeting tool, that after coming so far or coming up to this point, means we had a idea and then we evaluated the idea, we had number of alternatives, we selected one out of many ideas, then we conducted market and demand analysis, technical analysis, financial estimates and projections, and now we have come this far, and finally even at this level also we are going to say no to the venture or to the investment proposal. So it means when you finally select an investment proposal, you can understand, if you are very sincere and carefully evaluating any idea, if you are carefully conducting the market and demand analysis or technical analysis, and if you are sincerely going for the financial projections, there is hardly any reason that any investment proposal will fail. It will not fail. But if there is any loophole in selecting the project idea or generating the project idea or selecting one out of many, or maybe you have very hurriedly conducted the market and demand analysis, or you were very optimistic because of the myopic effects, you were very optimistic that yes, demand is going to be there, I am going to manufacture or the product or generate the service, and we are going to have the demand in the market and people are going to accept it with open arms. So that can be a myopic attitude and maybe a very optimistic attitude. So probably the things are not going to be same on the ground. And next thing can be that maybe your technical estimates were not based upon the facts on the reality, and you didn't understand that what will be the cost of the land, plant, building, machinery, and finally where the technology would be available, where the raw material would be available, what would be the cost of raw material, and finally whatever the financial estimates and projections we did, they were also not based upon the facts. So only in that situation the project will fail. Otherwise, in the normal course, if you are carefully going at every stage, at every step, and finally you are selecting that investment proposal, it means hardly there is any reason that investment say proposal will fail or that investment will fail, that project will fail, because we are very meticulous, we are very careful, and carefully we are making this entire analysis, and finally we are arriving at decision that yes, we want to go for making investment, and means that investment is planned investment, we have taken all the precautions, and finally we are going to be successful in this. But as we told you sometime in the past, after conducting all these kind of the analysis, Many times the projects fail also. The classical example of the Anchor Fruit Beer project is also there, where they lost 350 crores. They also were a company, they also had conducted a thorough analysis of the market. Their idea was also unique because fruit beer was not selling in India at that time. So they thought that this product can be introduced in Indian market, and they also conducted market and demand analysis. They also conducted technical analysis. They had, being a brewery, they had an expertise in manufacturing this kind of the products also. And finally their financial estimates and projections were also worked out. But finally when the product was brought in the market, it became a miserable failure and they lost 350 crores. So it happens many a times that even the large companies having a very good experience in the business, or maybe being in business for the past so many number of years, their proposals also fail sometimes. They lose money and finally those ventures have to be closed. So any project which is passing through this stage also and successfully giving us very positive results, besides the other stages we discussed so far, so finally we can say that the project will sustain and it will have the value and it is a worthwhile investment. And we will go for the next stage also, that is the risk analysis we will do in detail. And that way also we would like to be going to use it, that going to understand it, that whether that investment criteria, on this investment criteria project comes true or not, and if there is any defect found at any stage, or maybe the NPV is becoming negative at any stage in the foreseeable period at least, then we will not go for making the investment. So this is a very interesting technique, capital budgeting techniques. This is a very interesting set of the techniques, and we will be evaluating any new investment proposal on the different criteria. And finally, before saying yes to that investment proposal, we will have to pass through all these set of techniques, and finally we have to use the multiple techniques and evaluate the investment proposal. So first is the NPV, net present value, which I told you that on the one side we keep the cash outflows, on the other side we keep the cash outflows. So finally for calculating, say for example this is a cash outflow, right? So this is a cash outflow and we have to compare it with the cash inflow. So this is going to be cash inflow. So it means in this case this is a cash outflow and this is cash inflow. So cash outflow has to be equal to the value of the cash outflow, has to be equal to the value of the cash inflow. So in this case we have to discount the value of the cash outflows. Under NPV we have to discount the value of the cash outflow, and there this value also has to be discounted. This inflow value also has to be discounted, and finally we have to compare the discounted value of the cash outflow with the discounted value of cash inflow. And finally for calculating the NPV, means using this technique of NPV as a decision criteria or maybe as a acceptance criteria for the project, the minimum requirement is NPV has to be 0. It means your discounted value or the present value, you also call it as, you may call it as the present value or you call it as a discounted value. So the present value or the discounted value of the cash flow has to be, when you talk about this value, so means finally the present value, we call it as the present value or the discounted value. So present value or discounted value of the cash outflow has to be equal to the minimum, the present value or discounted value of the cash inflow. So in this situation, if this happens, your net present value of that investment would be 0, and this is the minimum investment requirement. For example, this is present value of the cash outflow, or this cash outflow is bigger as compared to the present value of the cash inflow. So what will happen? This will become minus. The NPV will become in minus, and if the reverse happens, the NPV will become positive, right? NPV will become positive because this side is bigger as compared to this side. So present value or discounted value of cash inflow is more than the present value or discounted value of the cash outflow. So this will be a plus situation because NPV will be more than 0. And if the reverse is going to happen, that your present or discounted value of the cash outflow is more than the present or discounted value of the cash inflow, in that case this is going to happen minus. So we are going to abandon the proposal and we are not going to go ahead, because this is not going to be a worthwhile proposal, going to give us the good results. So we will not go ahead with this. Maybe till now we have screened the idea very carefully, we have conducted the market and demand analysis very carefully, or we have conducted the technical analysis very carefully, and our financial projections are also going to give us the better results. Still we will not go ahead because finally applying the concept of the present value of the money, our net result is going to be negative, and where the value of the present value of the cash outflow is going to outweigh the value of the present value of the cash inflow, NPV is going to be negative. So, we are not going to go ahead with this proposal or this venture, and we have to redo the whole thing. We have to look for a new idea, evaluate it afresh, go for the market and demand analysis, technical analysis, estimation, projections, and finally it has to come true on the basis of the time value of the money using the concept of this investment criteria or maybe the techniques of the capital budgeting. So, we will be using like this the techniques like net present value, benefit cost ratio, internal rate of return, urgency is also sometimes we use. And so, these are the three set of techniques which has a one bunch, and we have the another say two set of techniques. These two set of techniques, this is a one bunch, right. So, these three one and these two one, and in between we have urgency, which is neither on the say upper side or on the lower side. It is something unique, you call it as in a situation when no evaluation is required and no evaluation is possible. Means the investment is urgent. For example, we have already a plant and it has 4, 5 or maybe 6 machines and they are interconnected. The output of the one machine becomes the input of the next machine and the output of the next machine becomes the input of the next machine. So, for example, they are working in a chain and in between there is a breakdown of the one machine. So, naturally, you will not keep on continue at that time would like to go for calculating the net present value of the replacement or a new machine or calculate the benefit cost ratio or internal rate of return. Rather, it is the urgency and you have to go for it. So, up to a limited extent, for example, if some capital expenditure is required to be incurred and it is of the urgent nature, then no investment criteria is of any use to us, neither NPV nor benefit cost ratio nor IRR. And similarly, payback period as well as the accounting rate of return also, they are of no use. So, we will go for urgency because without making that investment, our rest of the investment cannot work. So, seeing the rest of the investment working, we will have to make that investment into that say one component, one machine, one plant, one component of the plant, and there no investment criteria, maybe NPV, benefit cost ratio or IRR or payback period or accounting rate of return will work. So, that is urgency. But normally in the normal course of the say investment proposals, you have to evaluate it on the two accounts. One is the set of three techniques, NPV, benefit cost ratio and IRR, and other is the payback period and accounting rate of return. So, these are the two different set of the say capital budgeting techniques, and they fall into two different categories. Why they fall into two different categories, I will talk to you in the subsequent discussion. So, assessment of the various methods. So, when we are going to use these different techniques, we will learn about them, and normally in the practical life, we do not use any one of the techniques in isolation, rather we use them together, maybe one or two techniques together, not one only, and we go for using two or sometimes more than two techniques also, just to check it or just to check the feasibility of the robustness, that whether our analysis is robust or not. And to know about that extent of the robustness, we will have to understand that yes, our total say investment is going to be worthwhile and ultimately it is going to produce the positive NPV. So, we are going to make use of all these techniques, and why we tie them into two different groups, we will understand that also, that first set of the three techniques are different, other two set of techniques are different, and finally we have to make use of the multiple techniques at one point of time to evaluate the one investment proposal, not only one. We should not depend upon only one, rather we have to use the multiple techniques. So, we call them multiple techniques because of certain reasons. So, I will come to that in the subsequent discussion. Now, we talk about is something which is very critical before going ahead with the capital budgeting techniques, use of the capital budgeting techniques or applying the investment criteria into a investment proposal. So, in this case, there are certain important steps involved, and these important steps involved are 4 steps are involved here. These 4 steps are involved here, and these 4 steps help us to understand whether the project is worthwhile or not, whether this investment proposal is worthwhile or not. We have to determine that, and that will be possible on the basis of these say 4 steps or analysis or understanding very clearly of these 4 steps. And these 4 steps are, first step is, for example, the estimation of the cost and benefits of the project, estimation of the cost and benefits of the project. So, we have to very carefully go for estimation of the costs associated, and when we are going to say conduct the technical analysis, largely the cost part we are going to take care of by way of conducting the technical analysis. And when we are going for the market and demand analysis, so benefits part is going to be taken care of through that analysis, because costs will talk about the cash outflows and benefits will talk about the cash inflows, and we will discount them. When we will discount these cash outflows and cash inflows against some discount rate, which is basically the weighted average cost of capital, right, that is the weighted average cost of capital. So, that is called as R also. So, we will get to know something which I discussed with you just now, NPV, net present value. So, that would be our decision criteria or decision basis. So, first is to know about whether a investment proposal is worthwhile or not. We will have to go for the first thing, that is to estimate the cost and benefits of the project. Second thing is assess the riskiness of the project. Riskiness of the project. So, this is another important consideration, riskiness of the project. And one thing more here, for assessing the cost and benefits, we can use the capital budgeting criteria also. So, cost means would be the left hand side of the equation, the model, which will be talking about the sum total of the cash outflows, and benefits means the right hand side will be talking about the cash inflows. So, when you compare the cash outflows, the present value of the cash outflows with the present value of the cash inflows, so net present value has to be 0 minimum. So, that is the one way of looking at it. So, cash outflows will come to us from the technical analysis, cash inflows will come to us from the market and demand analysis, and finally, to find out whether the NPV is 0 or not, we have to discount those cash flows, and finally, we have to find out the NPV. Next step which we will be doing after learning about this investment criteria or the capital budgeting techniques, the next thing we will be learning about is the riskiness of those investment proposals. So, for the assessment of the riskiness, we will go for the risk analysis of the capital investment proposals, long term investment proposals, projects, and that would be the next thing we will be doing. And apart from that, we will have to go for the estimation of the cost of capital. We will have to go for the cost of capital estimation, because that is very important for us. So, because there are 2 rates of interest. One is the required rate of return, right, required rate of return ROR, and second one is the expected rate of return, expected rate of return. So, one is the required rate of return, you call it as required rate of return, ROR, and EROR. Right. So, 2 rate of returns are there. So, required rate of return are basically cost of my capital, right. As I told you many a times in the past also, that I have some surplus funds and I have number of investment avenues, and the first avenue is that I can give this money to the bank and bank will give me 6% rate, means interest at the rate of 6%. Am I happy with that? Yes or no? No. I am not happy with that. It means I want some better investment avenue. So, likewise, some people are not interested by making the investment in bonds or stock market or even in the real estate. So, they want to take a risk and they want to set up their own venture. And they say that because the required rate of return of my capital is, for example, 15% and no other investment avenue is giving me 15%. So, I will set up my own venture, my own startup or my enterprise, and I will earn 15%. Now, the expected rate of return from any investment say avenue, for example, bank is giving you 6%, so your required rate of return is 15%, bank is giving you 6%, so no match. For example, you go to bond market which is going to give you 7%, again no match. You go to the stock market which is going to give you 12%, again no match. If you go to real estate market which is going to give you 14%, you are not still satisfied, because you do not want to compromise anything less than 15%. So, your required rate of return is 15%, and up to this the investment avenues be evaluated. One is giving 6%, one is giving 7%, one is giving 12%, and another is giving 14%. So, I want to earn 15% and more, and for that purpose I have to go for setting up my own venture, and that is a very careful consideration of the cost of the capital, because cost of my capital is 15%. So, I should be getting back I should be getting back the return available, means the expected rate of return from that proposal should be 15%, and that is a very careful analysis, that if any project is going to give me 15% return on my investment, I will make investment into that. If it is not going to give me 15% return, I will abandon the idea, I will not go for it. So, what you have to do is, you have to go for the cost and benefits, you have to go for the riskiness, finally you have to see the cost of capital, because your required rate of return is 15%, expected should also be minimum 15%, expected rate of return should also be 15%, then only the proposal should be accepted. And finally, compute the criteria of merit and judge whether the project is good or bad. So, on the basis of the merit means on the basis of the cost and benefit, riskiness and cost of capital, we have to compute it and we have to see whether the project is good or bad, and finally take the call that if it is giving me the 15% return, it is good, and my cost is manageable, my benefits are also as expected, riskiness of the project is also within control and manageable. So, it means I can say, I can term this investment proposal as a good investment proposal, and finally I can take the call and I can make the investment. So, means before saying yes or no for anything, you have to decide it that I have to make investment. Yes, I am interested to make investment in any venture or in any startup, but before that I wanted to be sure about the certain important things, and I should be very clear about the cost and benefit. I should be very carefully doing the risk analysis, and my cost of capital should be comparable, right. So, if you are going to apply all this analysis on any investment proposal, on any project proposal, I am sure that the entrepreneur is going to be successful, the venture is going to be successful, and finally it is going to give you the desired results, and you are going to get the required rate of return from that investment proposal. So, these all techniques are developed over a period of time. The capital budgeting tools or investment criteria is developed over time to help the entrepreneurs or to the businesses and to understand whether they are going to get the required rate of return from that investment or not, and that is going to play a very important or the critical role. Now, the next thing we are going to talk about here is, that is the say investment criteria. In nutshell, we are going to see here, and then we will stop the discussion for this class. So, investment criteria, as we started talking about since beginning. So, we have two kind of, I told you that 3 set of techniques are different and 2 set of techniques are different. So, these are the 3 set of techniques, 1, 2 and 3, and this is 1 and this is 2. One we are calling as a discounted criteria, other is we are calling as a non-discounting criteria. So, discounting criteria is something where we discount the cash flows, applying the concept of the time value of money, which is quite logical, which is quite reasonable, right. So, we go for discounting the cash flows, and we discount both. We discount the cash outflows also, we discount the cash inflows also, and finally we try to calculate the net present value or benefit cost ratio we can apply. This is almost the same technique, or this is also the internal rate of return. So, these 3 techniques are based upon discounting of the cash flows. Discounting of the cash flows, both cash outflows and inflows, and calculating the NPV, and decision criteria is NPV should be 0, that is the minimum requirement. When you talk about the non-discounting criteria, so these are the old criteria when the concept of the time value of money was not known to the people. So, that was the payback period and the accounting rate of return. So, in this we normally do not apply the discounting process. We take the absolute cash flows, and finally we try to see that if any investment we are going to make, in how many years that investment is going to be recovered by us. So, that is called as a payback period, and under the accounting rate of return we simply calculate the average return available from any investment proposal or any project proposal, but without discounting the profits or the cash flows. So, one is discounted where time value of money concept is being applied, other is non-discounted where time value of money concept is not being applied, and finally we are going to evaluate and conclude on the basis of this decision criteria, investment criteria, whether a project proposal is worthwhile making investment and taking it forward, or it is not. If it is not, we will drop it, and if it is yes, we will go ahead, we will make investment, And finally, if any proposal becoming worthwhile on the basis of this analysis, certainly to a larger extent, 99%, that would be a successful venture. So, at the moment we will stop here, and the remaining discussion on the investment criteria or on the capital budgeting tools and techniques, both discounted and non discounted, we will discuss in the next class. Till then, thank you very much.